Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Joshua, and welcome to Do It Live Autonomy Podcast. Today on our show, we're joined by Kara, Tony, Tim, Amanda, Daniel, and there's lots. Who knows? Who knows who will show up? Also, Tyler's going to be in here. This is a really jam-packed show today. We have lots to cover, lots of guests. And I'm really excited about this. So we're going to start off. This week was just jam-packed. I got back from Hawaii on Monday night. I tried to catch as much as I could while still being on vacation, but it was really great having a week away. I only turned my laptop on once. That was the first time I've been so offline in years. And so I came back feeling really refreshed and excited to jump back into things. And there was no shortage on things to capture my attention and to contribute to once I got back. We're going to be covering some of these highlights from the week, as well as we've got some special news for upcoming things inside of the autonomy world. So first off, why doesn't everybody say their name and maybe one thing that they grew from this last week? Who wants to start first?
I'll start. Hi, I'm Tony. You just wanted me to cover one thing from this week?
Just one.
Just one? Okay. Well, I did the premiere for D&D Labs, design and development community and service provider. So that was really exciting. I worked really hard to put together a little slideshow presentation for people, and we had a great discussion afterwards that lasted over an hour, and we talked about the future of this enterprise and all the different skills that people can learn, and it ended up being a very fruitful discussion, and we'll be meeting again this month on the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving. So, and that'll be at 8 p.m. So if anyone wants to join us, come free and, hop on in.
Yeah. And what topics are you guys covering inside of D&D Labs?
Well, design and development for the web. So we're covering, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. We're the full stack tech stack that we're going to be using is Node.js and MongoDB. And we're also going to be going over user experience, user interface. There's going to be a learner contract. This is something Heidi Maria has been talking to me about. And this is setting up different pathways for people through the course to achieve the outcome that they want. So, yep, that's it.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're learning that because I don't have to.
I love it. It's like putting a puzzle together. It's so fun.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any wins they want to share from this last week?
I'd be happy to, Joshua. My name is Amanda Price, and I actually had the opportunity in real life to try out the sales skills, the sales conversation skills that we've been honing since week 5 with a client who is hiring me to consult in bringing empathy into his organization. So huge win and a lot of learning. I was in the do it live mentality having this conversation, and it really went much better than expected. And truly it had to do with what I've been practicing and learning here in Autonomy. So yeah, big win for me.
Awesome. Was it, were you nervous while you were doing it?
No, I honestly, I was nervous before the call. And once we started talking, it was like just in the flow. It really was, it felt very natural.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Anybody else have a win from this last week they want to share?
Yeah, I'll go if no one else is going to go. This is Nathan Lee Miller Foster here. Hi.
Nathan.
Lee. Yeah, hey, buddy. How are you?
Great, great. Good to hear your voice, man.
I launched the Invisibles reading group with 15 other people, which was going into this. It's a reading group. It's a chaos magic book. So when one person reads it, crazy shit happens. Pardon my language, but do it live. Crazy things happen. And then 15 people who are aware of these kind of like green language mechanisms, and that's a whole other conversation, reads it. Holy potatoes. So, yeah, we got a bunch of people reading this book right now, and it was an organizational endeavor. It took a lot of, getting people together. It's like organizing Chaos Magicians is organizing Stray Cats. But I'm very proud that on 11/11 at 11:11 p.m. it launched, and we have exactly the minimum number of people that I had projected I wanted. I wanted at least 15 people, and we had 15 people. So big win.
Nice, way to go. And what was it, a book that you're going to be covering, or like a series?
Yes. So it's a book that's a series of books. It's a collection of all of the Invisibles comic books that were written between about 1994 and I want to say, I forget when, 98, I think maybe. It was a bunch of comic books that were all embedded with different kinds of like hieroglyphs, sigils, hyper sigils. The thing itself is what's known as a hyper sigil. It's a consciousness bomb. So we're performing psychic surgery on the world right now, so to speak.
That sounds exciting and delicate.
Well, don't be too presumptuous with our delicacy, my good sir. But it's great to see you too, by the way. And hi, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for popping in. I hope to see you in season 2 more often. Tim, what's new with you?
How are you? Yeah, I had a few small wins today, today and this week. Luis reached out to me yesterday. I was driving home from Oakland. He's a season 1 graduate. I hadn't heard from him for 6 or 8 weeks. And he just kind of highlighted the nature of the relationships that we're building in the course and the value that they provide. And I had met he and his wife in person at Red Pill 1. We had breakfast. And it just highlighted the chance to have kind of intimate and discussions with people that you get to know over time. I had great discussion with Amanda and Lisa and Amos this morning, and other people have connected from season 2 this week. So I'm getting to know some people from season 2, and then I'm working on. I've kind of gotten energized about a presentation around kind of the medical industrial complex. So I've been working on that, and it seems to be getting some traction as I have given a preview to a few people. I'm getting feedback. The issue is, where do you stop? Like, it gets deep. And then the nature of conveying that information without scaring the hell out of people. And where is the key? And that's some of the things that we're working on together with the crew is, how do we communicate in a safe way to people who might be afraid? And how do we have those conversations around important topics? And that goes back to sales as well, is how do we have those conversations where we're both mutually benefiting from the discussion? Nobody's getting triggered, nobody's getting upset, and yet we're conveying meaningful and significant content to people. And it's a art that we're learning in AUTONOMY and that we can practice together. And there's been a lot of interest in role play as well. And there's a lot of people interested in doing role plays. I think what is happening to us is we start a little role play, and then other people will come in and we go down other avenues of discussion, which are really valuable. But I think maybe we'll set up a little dojo that is focused on how do we communicate safely around difficult topics where people might be triggered. So a lot of great ideas. I'm really energized. I just need a time machine and a mind reader, and everything will be perfect.
Well, that sounds like really valuable work. Like we all are surrounded by people we care for and wanting to be able to share information in a way that could be helpful to them, I think is important to everybody.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity to talk with you all and people in autonomy is an opportunity to clarify your ideas and get feedback in a really safe environment from people of diverse backgrounds. And I was discussing this with my wife, and that, that's not necessarily something you can do in your neighborhood or at work, because there's always a level of judgment of how are you conforming to the norm. So thank you all for that.
Definitely. Kara, I heard that you got a business started this last week.
I did. Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about that, and how was that process for you?
Sure. My business is called Authentic Expressions, and I'm a copywriter. Really, I've had this idea in my head for a while, and honestly, I've had the name with me for a while, but it only just really clicked for me what my message is over the last few weeks. And it has to do with what we usually think of as sales. And sales and marketing having so many different kinds of fear tactics and a lot of manipulation oftentimes. And I really want to stay true to my authentic self. And while you absolutely have to acknowledge a problem before you can present a solution, I believe it's very possible to do that without stabbing pain points all the time. So that's really what I want the message of my business to be. And it's been really nice to hone that in. So I've got my business license, and I actually need to get more involved in the D&D labs so that I can start getting a website up and running in the future. And
Hey, we could do an exchange. I would love to get some copywriting done.
let's talk. Definitely.
Yeah, Kara, what are some of the services that you offer under the copywriting umbrella?
So under copywriting, I do email marketing. I put together Facebook ads. So I also do lead generation. So I'll help in creating educational material for lead magnets. So creating PDFs, anything to try and capture the attention of your audience and wrangle in some email addresses so you can get on their radar. I do a lot of blogging, and I'm sure I'm missing something in there. I do website content as well.
Sweet. And you help me with my spelling too.
I do.
Do you also do keyword research and stuff like that?
I do.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. That's the part I don't like doing.
SEO was something that I had no real interest in, but obviously in this line of work, I had to start learning. And what I really love about the work that I do is that by creating educational content for others, I'm learning in the process. So I've done a lot of writing articles around SEO and around keyword research. And in the process of researching to write these articles, I'm learning at the same time. So I feel like it's kind of a win-win for me.
Fantastic.
That's great.
Well, we're going to move this along. We have a lot to cover today. There's so much content that was created this last week. We're just going to go and highlight a few of the clips and then have a roundtable discussion about what we all experienced and what we missed. So first off, I'm going to go back and show a highlight of Amanda's third presentation on empathic communication. And we'll start there.
I wanted to thank Joshua for introducing me to Alan Side, and I was thrilled to hear that he was a guest one lecturer with the Autonomy Season 1 group. After learning about Alan, I jumped on YouTube and checked out a few of his video recordings, and in one, I was struck by the wisdom of his statement, which I post here in this slide. And what it does is it leads me to ask the question, what choices are we going to make when we're presented with requests or demands that don't resonate with what we really want or value? So it's common for many of us to agree to do something we really don't want to do at times, but nevertheless, we find ourselves saying yes due to one or more of the alienating motivations that I just shared before. Now, NVC suggests that whenever we say yes,
when we really want to say no, there's usually a cost to both parties, whether it comes up early on or later on. And those costs could look like anything from slight irritation to growing resentment, disconnection, maybe even anger. Another option we can choose is to say no with care. We may also choose to sit and hold space for curiosity and a possible change of heart, even when the no comes first.
Amanda, this was a really excellent presentation. And if you didn't catch this, you can catch all three of Amanda's series in the course. Season 2. They're all, you can find them in the course. We've talked about the content before, and today I really wanted to highlight, Amanda, like how you put together this fine presentation. It really comes across as very professional and well organized, and it had a great style to it. And did you have background in doing this beforehand, or was this your first one?
Yeah. Thanks, Joshua. I have had background in creating presentations in general. As it relates to nonviolent communication or empathic communication, this was really just the second opportunity I've had to put together these kinds of presentations. And so my background in the corporate world added to my general skill set within PowerPoint and determining how to deliver the messages that I want. And at the same time, I had a fantastic internship with a woman named Marie Miyashiro, who is an international business consultant who has been integrating empathy into organizations for the last 15 years. She studied under Marshall Rosenberg. And in the internship I had with her, she really enabled me to bring my skills up to the next level in terms of presentation. So, I think the polish that you're seeing is a direct result of the time that I spent with Marie. She's an incredible lady. And she's also the author of the book, The Empathy Factor. In fact, I'll give her a little plug right now. Here it is right here. It's a business book, Your Competitive Advantage for Personal, Team, and Business Success. And it's a wonderful work talking about how we bring empathy and listening and honest expression, not only, with ourselves and with one or two others, but actually in organizations, which is somewhat new territory for folks within the nonviolent communication community. So yeah, that's really where I built my skills within the presentation arena.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, because it's so great to have the opportunity throughout the weeks where if you have something that you want to organize and present to others, that we all have the opportunity to just kind of pick a night and be able to showcase what we're excited about. And it was great that you joined the community and put yourself out there and put together a really fine mini course.
Thank you, Joshua. And another thing I did was, once we wrapped up the third session, I actually jotted down the learnings I took from creating this presentation for autonomy. So I've already shared it with another student who's thinking about doing a mini course. And if anyone else would like to see what I learned and what I wrote down, I'm happy to share it. I could even put it in the class chat so everyone can have access to it. But I took so many learnings in terms of the technology piece, how to present in a Zoom webinar format, what to expect from the audience in terms of participation or not, depending on what their expectations are, and what's been advertised in terms of what they can expect, as well as a big learning around practicing before I go live, understanding, like literally saying the words I'm going to speak out loud, because what I might write down in my notes may look very different than how it sounds coming out. So speaking what I'm going to present and timing it, some of those just logistics were really helpful to me. And so happy to share my learnings with anyone who's interested in sharing their content with the class.
Yeah, please do. That sounds like gold. And the NVC is not going to be stopping with just your mini course. What do you have coming up for the community?
Yeah, so beginning next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm planning a weekly empathic communication practice session. So this will be very dynamic, very interactive. We'll have group discussions. I'll design some exercises that we can do either as individuals or in dyads or triads to really hone in on our skills, because it's really just like our sales conversations and our interviews. It really is about practice, practice, practice to make it second nature. And as Tim had mentioned at the beginning of our call today, one of the topics that I'd really like to hone in on is that work around acknowledging when we get stimulated by hearing words from somebody else and how we can reconnect and bring ourselves back to calm so that we can stay in conversation rather than just get mad or self-protective, defensive, or want to just freeze or walk away. I think that's a hurdle for a lot of us when we're talking about really high stakes information. So being able to stay in conversation and keep ourselves at a level of equanimity that really allows us to come to a better outcome in our conversations with others, both in imparting information as well as hearing them. So
nice. It's so important to be able to stay in that uncomfortable zone and to steer through it instead of recoil, overreact. There's a lot of value in being able to just hold the space, not only for your own self and outcome, but you are able to influence others.
Exactly. And when we're in these conversations with others and they observe how we're able to do this, then we're role modeling what we would like to see and experience in the world, right? So others will learn from us too.
Yeah. I actually, 2 nights ago, my close friends were having real challenging communication issues, and their trust levels were just extremely low. Empathy was not there, and they kept just blowing up every time they were around. They have a infant, and so the stress is just top notch for them. And I commend them because they actually reached out, and I was able to talk to the father and give him some empathy just by listening, just putting on my listening skills, not jumping to strategies or telling him what he should be doing. I just let him share what was troubling him. And then I did the same with the mom in a separate conversation. And then something I learned from Alan, I got them both together and had 2 pieces of paper. And one of them said, can you repeat back to me what you heard me say? And the other piece of paper said, what's coming up for you when you hear this? Yeah. And the purpose of this was to really slow down conversation, because when we get in arguments and conflict, the conversation speeds up and our prefrontal cortex shuts down, and we just start reacting and saying things we don't actually mean. We're just kind of reciprocating the daggers that are coming at us. So those 2 pieces of paper were the only thing that they could ask after they shared what was troubling them. And so can you repeat back to me what you heard me say is to make sure that the information that you just said got delivered the way that you intended it to. So they mirror back what they heard, and the speaker and the first speaker got a chance to correct or add or just make sure that it was exactly what they were intending to say. And then they would move on to what's coming up for you. So kind of handing it off to them, hearing what their responses to what they said. And it was a 3-hour conversation, and asked them how they were doing the next day, and got a wonderful reply of how much that helped out, just to slow things down and to be able to share what's going on for each individual is I mean, communication is fundamental in every relationship. And if that's not working well, as I know, the whole world crumbles if my wife and I are in a disagreement. Yeah. So I was really blessed to again have them reach out to me and be able to utilize my NVC skills in that manner.
Yeah, what a gift you've given them, Joshua. And those kinds of connection requests, as you said, they really do slow things down. And if you just put yourself in their shoes, how great does it feel when you recognize that you've really, really been heard, right, and understood? And that doesn't necessarily mean agreement, but it does mean that my message has been conveyed. And it's also important to take some self-responsibility for ensuring that the message that you want to send is received the way it's intended. So you gave them that space too. So what a wonderful experience. And I'm sure you got a lot out of that, contributing to them too, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it was humbling to just see that. It felt like kind of moving in molasses, but it was great because less chance for misinterpretation. And like you said, got to fully express yourself and be heard.
Yeah.
So Joshua, why is it so much easier when you're on the outside of that discussion to facilitate it versus when you're in the middle of it?
Well, there's not the emotional charge that they're dealing with. So I get my prefrontal cortex to be able to add some reason to the discussion and be able to have an outside perspective, be able to validate reality for either of them. And so, I really withheld any strategy as much as I could. But when I saw them kind of getting stuck in kind of a loop, I was able to kind of jump in and be like, do you mean something like this? Okay, great. You can both agree and then we can move forward. So, if I was getting paid, from the outside, it didn't look like I was doing much.
No, you were doing a lot.
Yeah, but I was holding space.
Yeah. So I love what you all are talking about and have a strong interest in there. And so at the risk of non sequitur, I'm going to comment on Amanda's presentation tips. And one thing that I found useful, and it's kind of like coming off mute in the Discord for the first time, like it's a little scary, but then once you jump the hurdle, then that goes away on the presentation side. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, if you were considering it, then just do it, right? Just come up with it and do it. And then you don't have to go live with your first attempt. Pick some trusted people out of the Discord, out of the class, and do a rehearsal. So that way, like Amanda said, you can hear yourself saying the words, you can get the feedback, you can revise your slides, you can understand how your audience is receiving the information, and you can improve it. So if you do like 1 or 2 or 3 dry runs and do the improvements, by the time you get to the full class or to your larger audience, you'll have a product that you're happy with and it's been through in several sessions. And once you get to that point, the energy level that you're going to have is going to be really high, and it's kind of just like doing the exercise and then feeling the pain. And then when you come back to the exercise again, you have more energy. You can see over the next hill. You don't know what's over there, but just take the next set of steps. And I think that's a lot of what autonomy is about, is just wading into the fear, wading into the ambiguous and unknown, and making that next thing real, even though you don't know exactly what it is.
Very well said. And you know this because you put on a presentation in season 1. What was the title of that?
That was the Intellectual Self-Defense for Kids. It was BS Detector for Kids. It was kind of like a subtitle, yes.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that, and I'm trying not to be too perfectionist with my next presentation.
Well, great. Well, we're all really excited to see that, because you really bring a lot of quality and value to the community, Tim.
Thanks, Joshua.
Well, let's keep this train moving. next up, I have a clip from Brett's mastermind on Tuesday. And Tony and Daniel, you were both there. So I'll have you guys kind of give a summary of how that went after this clip.
Maybe the point isn't to just create a solution and then have it be wildly successful, but to actually engage in the work of creating the solution. And I think that should be the main focus, is just engaging in that act of creation and making that the goal. Because yeah, I've just been listening to a lot of psychology stuff, and that's what I got from it, is that sometimes you have to set that like life purpose for yourself, and in the end, everyone may ignore it, but the whole point is that you dedicated yourself to it and you tried.
Yeah, that you lead a purposeful existence, right?
And it's about doing it with excellence, because none of us might discover the solutions that make freedom go into the future, but maybe somebody that listens to something or watches something or reads something that we do during our lifetime is able to do that because of that little inspiration, that nugget of information, that turning point, that pivot, that awakening moment, those things, right? So don't be attached to the outcome, be attached to the excellence of performing the actions for yourself and other people, and then I think it has a better chance to unfold.
Tony, you want to summarize your conversation with Brett?
There's a lot to summarize there, but yeah, let me see here. I think at the end, it really was trying to pinpoint who the target audience is for these kinds of things, because you're not going to be able to reach everyone. I think it goes back to Rich's metaphor of like looking for the people who want to be saved. And I think that that's what that clip right there is ultimately getting at, is that there's all these people who are stuck in Facebook land, and it may not even be worth, trying to pull them in, because they might just pull you under. So yeah, I think, looking at the do-it-yourself movement, looking for people who are looking at personal development, and those are the people we want to reach out to, the people who want to solve their problems instead of fall victim to, their own mentality of being a victim, because that's largely where a lot of people are at. And if they're not looking to get out of that, if they're not looking to empower themselves, then it's going to be difficult to get through. And I think that, maybe even Kara has something to say about this too, about because she's talking about positive copywriting and not just focusing on people's pain points. And I think that is incredibly powerful and something that I want to implement in my own advertising and in sales, because I think this comes up even in the conversation too. Like, I want to be someone who is kind of like a shining beacon to others. So they see me and they see, oh, like, look at what this guy has done. And, I could do that too. And so it gets them to focus on the positive instead of the negative. And I really think that if there is any chance of reaching some of these people who are stuck in that kind of victim mentality, that's going to be the way to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I caught the tail end of the discussion, and it was a good look at what we're all kind of dealing with, because I don't think not everybody in our lives is receptive to like what we're achieving here in autonomy, and we can really spend a lot of energy trying to pull that horse to the water when they're not thirsty.
Exactly. And I'm still not sure where, and I guess one of the other things that came out of it, I'll just mention this too, it's a little bit separate from that topic, but this idea of building alternative platforms for Facebook that focus on being agent centric and allowing the person to have control over their identity and how they interact with the app. I do think that that is going to be something that is needed in the future, because there is going to be a tipping point with these platforms, I believe. It's just a matter of having the infrastructure set up and ready to go, so that when people are ready to jump ship, if they don't, want to just fall into empty space, they can, get on this other platform and, have those privacy features built right in out of the box, not be, and, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, with YouTube, like this podcast is going to be on YouTube because that's where the people are at the time being. But YouTube's just put out a new policy this last week saying that they can delete your channel if it's not if it's not viable for monetization. So if they don't think that your videos are worthy of commercials by the advertisers that they choose, then they can just delete your whole channel. And that's against the very premise of YouTube from what it was designed as, because it was for the people and a place to host videos of the amateur and the average person. And now it's not that whatsoever.
Yep. And look at who's demonetized. It's definitely all the political channels, anyone who does real commentary, social commentary. That's who they're targeting. They're targeting anyone who
Taboo
talks out
subjects.
against the status quo. So does anyone else have something to add about Brett's discussion on Tuesday? Daniel, you were there.
I was there. I didn't speak or participate at all because you guys were having such a fluid and, I thought, productive conversation. I guess, well, my takeaway from your discussion with Brett is really, it has more to do with the actual events that Brett produces every Tuesday in Autonomy. Up to this point, and including last week's presentation, there's never really a set agenda. It's not like he posts something today, we're going to talk about X, and then everybody conforms to that. It's more just a very open or general meeting. Yet, what I found in this past discussion that you guys had was that even though there was no set agenda, it still took a useful and consistent form. So what I took away from it was, if I wanted to learn about pretty much anything having to do with the condition of social media today, be it the larger problems, such as what you were just discussing with the censorship, or even just how to develop and maintain a presence on social media for a business, that would be a useful resource for me to refer to. So I think that it just speaks to the mindset that has been instilled in students of autonomy, where we can just get together and with no agenda and just start talking about something and then wind up having a great 2-hour conversation about something as important as social media. Where's it headed? I know at the end, Colin jumped in and it turned into a larger discussion about social media. It was really great to listen to. So I would like to listen to it again, because as I say, it's a good resource. So that was my major takeaway, was that even spontaneously, there's a lot of value to be wrought when 2 autonomizers or 3 get together in a virtual room.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's not just Tuesday nights, that's every day, at any time of the day.
Yep, that's true. That's true. This is just a good showcasing of it.
Yep.
I've been really fascinated with my own habits with Facebook specifically. I used to check in every day, a couple times, and hop on that dopamine feed. And now with the contrast of autonomy and the value I get from not only talking to real people, the audio chat rooms, but our feed is constantly filled with content and resources that are extremely valuable. To have that as a contrast, now when I hop back into Facebook and scroll down, I'm like disgusted with what's there versus what I can get in the autonomy feed, and it really just shows you got to have a contrast to see what it is that you're being dealt.
Well, we discussed Moritz Berling again during Tuesday, and one of the things he talks about is if you're going to use these platforms, you should learn how to control the flow of information so that you can pull the good stuff out and not let the other stuff in or through your filter. And so what I do now, when I go on Facebook, I don't see any of that stuff because I unfollowed everyone that doesn't produce anything. So yeah, that's the way to go, I think, is, turn down that fire hose a little bit, put a filter on it, and just get the good stuff.
And that means not unfriend everyone
No, just
on
unfollow.
Facebook. But when you unfollow them, then they just don't show up in your feed. And it's pretty easy to separate the positive influence into your life and those that are just using it to dump their garbage out there. So that's definitely a good tip. Even still, it doesn't match the quality of autonomy.
Oh, absolutely not. I hardly go on there too. Even with that filter, there's still not a lot.
Daniel, did you have another episode with Brett this week? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we actually wound up recording that Monday. So it's number 5 in a monthly series we've been doing called In Pursuit of Utopia, where we basically just go chronologically through history and point out major utopian projects of the past and sort of dissect them for the audience. So on the one hand, it's sort of a review of a given historical period, but it's also me trying to convince the audience that there's a different lens or mindset to approach history with, which is that essentially, throughout time, there have been small groups of people who sought to impose centralized order, and that is, for all intents and purposes, a utopian scheme. That's sort of my psychological, historico-philosophical approach that I'm taking with this project. So in this past episode, we talked about the French Revolution, which is probably the best example of a historical utopian scheme. It started off with, of course, the highest possible ideals: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, even, freedom of the slaves, rights for women, and it wound up being a horrible, headless, bloody mess that resulted in a military dictatorship. So, it's not really hard to sell the utopian lens with that story, but nonetheless, it was a really good show. Brett said that it was his favorite so far, so I look forward to seeing that released probably this coming week. And as far as people being able to listen to it, it's bonus content on Brett's website, schoolsucksproject.com, but the series is available for free on my website, which is ageofutopia.info, so I could get a link out if anyone's interested in seeing that.
That'd be great. I'm really excited to check that out. Well, we're going to be moving along. We've still got a lot to cover today. And now I have a short clip of Ty and Kara doing a sales role play from this past week.
Well, that's great to have a referral like that. I mean, so you come in already to this meeting with some kind of idea of what's going on and what's going to happen. So that makes it a lot easier for me to talk to you about it, I think. Knowing about Richard Grove's work, the ultimate history lesson, and in the Porkfest video, John, he talks about John Taylor Gatto and the deliberate dumbing down of the educational system and the things that we were missing as a result of that. The critical thinking skills, the active literacies, and autonomy is a way for grown-ups who've already been through the indoctrination system to start to pick those things up and to start to show proficiency by demonstrating them in a fear-free environment where, where you're able to express anything that you want to express, and you're not going to be jumped on for it. And, it's more than just a series of lectures. You have a series of lectures, and these things are great. They talk about the indoctrination system and what it specifically did to take away our intellectual self-defense and make us dependent on authority. But it's from practicing on the Discord server with other students that you really start to see the gains in your own life. So that's a little bit about autonomy. Now, you already told me about a lot of your goals. You already told me that you want to start a family, that you want some financial freedom. And do you mind sharing with me a little bit about those frustrations that so far have been keeping you from being able to do that? Like, I know you're talking about working as a breakfast waitress. You seem like a very social person. So I'm sure that you're a great breakfast waitress. I'm sure that you light up people's lives every day, especially when you have your regular customers, right? They come in going, oh, Kara, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I do. I do really enjoy making people's day.
Yeah, but you don't want to be like the old Piano Man song where, he's talking to Davey, who's still in the Navy and probably will be for life, right? You want to be...
I'm looking for something a lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to chart your own course.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been the biggest thing you felt has held you back so far? What have you been, that you've been missing something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's okay if you tell me where it hurts, because you can go get a Kleenex and I'll just wait. All right. So go ahead.
That's great. So you guys were doing a role play. Ty was someone that was a salesperson for the autonomy course, and Kara, you heard about it, and so you reached out and had a call with the salesperson. How was that whole experience for you, and what came of it?
Oh, it was great. Ty's been getting some good practice in. So it was a really great experience. We started off with him doing the role play of him and playing the salesperson for me, and then we ended up switching. And I really appreciated it because I've been a little behind in the integration exercises. And I had a moment last week where I just had a day where I said, I really need to get going on this. So I went in and I scheduled 5 different calls just all at once before I could talk myself out of it. And Ty was one of the first ones. And it was great. He just kind of helped me dive right into it. And I was able to learn a lot from experiencing his practice and what he was able to bring to that side of the conversation. I really felt heard. He demonstrated a lot of really wonderful listening and reflecting, did a lot of reflecting back of what I had to say. And so I really felt heard, and he was very in tune with what I was, with what my challenges were.
Great. And so after feeling heard and feeling like you were understood, how was the offer, the closing of the call? How did that go?
It went well. He did very well on just kind of giving me the overview of more of what autonomy is and how it could help me. And once they kind of brought in the connection to my personal experience of how it could help me, it definitely, I felt myself really honing right into the yes.
So did you play softball, or did you dig your heels in a little bit?
I played pretty softball for this one.
Nice. And then you guys flipped, and you were the salesperson. How was that experience?
It was good. I went completely off script. What I actually found, I had the script up, and what I discovered really, really quickly is that by looking at the script, I wasn't being present. So I just kind of just put that off to the side, and I just really wanted to stay present with Ty and where he was at and stay in the conversation. So definitely I just kind of went off the cuff, wung it, and he had some good feedback for me at the end, and was able to see some areas that I could improve on. But I definitely would have not known those areas until actually doing it. I'm really happy that I stepped out of my comfort zone to finally start doing these exercises.
That's fantastic. You took your floaties off.
Yes.
Well, sweet. And yeah, like you can't get the experience without actually doing it. And it takes, like you said, reaching out and making those time blocking that time for the role plays, and then just to jump right into it. And it's uncomfortable at first because it's just uncharted territory. But then, like you said, we all have this innate ability to connect with other human beings, and this is just learning that's all we're doing. We're just tuning in. We're listening for similarities. We're listening to things that we have that mirror things in our own lives, and just being able to connect, and then moving to an offer. There's a hard yes no that you go to in order for them to make a choice.
Exactly. And like I said, trying to in the moment, especially focus on the script. I was way too much in my head and I wasn't present at the heart level. So when I just kind of set that aside and just stayed present, it all came pretty naturally. Of course, it gets a little clunky in there, but that's just, I discovered, hey, I'm just having a conversation.
That's really great. And way to go to jump in with both feet. And it starts becoming pretty fun because you get to role play and imagine yourself as whoever you want to fit the role of the call. And once you start getting a little bit comfortable, you can play hardball, which makes it even more realistic and more skill building for the other person. And so all season 2 we're kind of going into the shallow end right now, but it gets funner and more robust. And I'm excited to do a few integration exercises next week and just to sharpen my skills. Did anybody else pull off any exercises this week they want to talk about?
Yeah, I had a really good one with Gus earlier in the week. We went back and forth. He interviewed me, then I interviewed him. It went really well. I thought it was very productive. So I just want to take the opportunity now to say that my Calendly link is calendly.com/DFMCCX. So everybody hit me up. I want more. Just because I was season 1 doesn't mean that I'm done. So yeah, I just want to open it up to everybody. I want to have my schedule packed.
You heard it, everyone. All right, well, now we're going to move along to what else was presented this last week. Rich kicked off his first, not his first, but an ongoing series that he's going to be doing called Smart Reads. And this week he covered Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And I'm just going to show a small clip of this where he pulls off one of his artifacts from his bookshelf and cracks it open for us all to see what these things are saying that aren't necessarily shared in the common media. I was actually watching this on the plane, and my buddy walked by and he saw me watching a video reading a book, and he was like, "Are you watching a video reading a book?" I was like, yeah, it's really important stuff. So here it is.
Chapter 1. Let's see if we can do this and keep it in focus. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government. which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together in a smoothly functioning society. Our invisible governors are, in many cases, unaware of the identity of their fellow members of the inner cabinet. They govern by their qualities of natural leadership, their ability to supply needed ideas by their key position in the social structure. Whatever attitude one chooses toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every aspect of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons. The small number of persons, a trifling faction of our 120 million, who understand the mental processes and the social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness the old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. It is not usually recognized how necessary these invisible governors are to the orderly functioning of our group life. In theory, every citizen may vote for whom he pleases. We, skipping down the page, we have voluntarily agreed to let an invisible government sift the data and high spot the outstanding issue so that our field of choice shall be narrowed to practical proportions. From our leaders and the media they use to reach the public, we accept the evidence and the demarcation of issues bearing upon the public question. From some ethical teacher, be it a minister, favorite essayist, or merely the prevailing opinion, we accept a standardized code of social conduct to which we conform most of the time. Now, at that point, we've just read 2 pages of this book. I would like to open it up for anyone who has a question, comment, observation.
Well, that was a very impactful introduction to that book of Propaganda by Edward Bernays. The rest of the book backs those claims up. Those are some very heavy-duty claims, and it's well worth the read of that short book to see just how 100 years ago this was what was. And 100 years have gone by being shaped by this information and these formulas and by this invisible hand. And I really enjoyed Richard's presentation of this because he goes through and highlights juicy aspects of these books and then opens it up for discussion, and people are able to join in and ask questions and learn more about this. Anybody have any takeaways from this presentation?
Yeah. He's talking in the book. They're talking about, I think it's Edward Bernays. He's talking about narrowing the scope of the things that we perceive, the information that we take in. And back then, of course, it was very easy. They had newspaper. Then, of course, with television, it was still pretty easy. Nowadays, though, it's much easier for us to see what's beyond that. And that's why censorship on the internet is such an important topic nowadays, because if they can take control of that and narrow that stream again, they can channel whatever they want to us. So I think that is an incredibly important thing to understand, because there is a growing movement of people who see that there is a larger world beyond the history that is bundled and packaged and shipped to us. So, and also there's, the personal development movement who are focusing in on unconscious habits and building better habits. And this is a way of essentially deschooling yourself. So I think that if we can keep that information front and center and focus on these issues and creating solutions to them, we can help break free from this propaganda machine that has been created.
Yeah, upon watching this, I've read propaganda, but it dawned on me upon watching this. I think Pam hopped in and said, like, what was your last original thought? And that was such an impactful question, because from my own experience coming into the truth movement and pursuing information that isn't widely shared, I'm still picking up other people's ideas and then taking those as my own. And it wasn't until coming across Tragedy and Hope that somebody was telling me to ask questions instead of just parroting these finished ideas that I was coming in contact with. Even though they held like a resonance, and I felt that they had truth to them, or at least some truth to them. It's not really until recently that I'm seeing propaganda is really a form of mind control, and being able to govern my mind so that I'm only accepting this data that's coming at me without questioning it to come to my own conclusions. And it's, as we just read, narrowing the scope like that is how you get people to come to your conclusions. And I really enjoyed what Pam said, because it pulls you out of that narrow scope, and to look back and be like, oh yeah, well, it's been a little while since I just kind of free thought and came up with my own conclusion. Because for the last several years, I've been on a very heavy dose of consumption of content, just to really try to get to fill in the terrain of my map, to see what kind of environment that I'm living in. And it's a pretty developed map, but still, I haven't spent a lot of time in reflection to come to my own thoughts and conclusions.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you just said, that we reflect on the conclusions we've accepted to see, have we went and looked at the primary evidence ourselves and looked at all the information in that topic? Like, have you collected your grammar? Have you done the logic on it yourself? And, also acknowledging that sometimes you just don't know. I think largely that's why people will do this and just accept pre-bundled conclusions, is because they don't like not knowing something or not having an opinion. So yeah, that's an incredibly important aspect of this, is just saying, I don't know about this, I need to do research.
Yeah. Daniel, I know you have something to say about this.
I sure do. Well, my one of the first major projects I embarked on with my website was doing a chapter-by-chapter breakdown of this book. It's a project that's still in progress, but basically I just pull out the most important quotes and do some commentary from each chapter. So, my copy at this point is more pencil than print. So oftentimes it can be hard to read, but I have yet to watch the entire replay of the Smart Reads episode. I'm really looking forward to doing that probably this week. So I don't know if this came up, but there's one really important point about this book overall that I wanted to relate to everybody, which is one of Bernays' many intrinsic contradictions that he brings to his argument, which is, as Rich read in that clip, on the very first and second page, he says that this invisible government that exists, that binds and guides the public mind, is composed of people who the masses have, quote unquote, never heard of. So we take that and, okay, fine. Most people have never heard of these invisible governors. Yet on the second page and throughout the book, he consistently says that the existence of this invisible government is voluntarily agreed upon by the masses, that the masses are consenting to the existence of these people to filter the information for them because they couldn't possibly do it on their own. So the very obvious, glaring contradiction of this whole argument is, how can you consent to that which you are unaware of? How do you consent to something you don't know exists? So it, to me, I think goes back, all the way back, to Plato's Republic and the existence of a sort of hidden ruling elite that, you know, they are the ones who are fit to decide what the culture should contain and get rid of what it should not contain, the masses being unaware of its existence. So I just wanted to bring that one point to the table, because it is so important to recognize that, you know, here is essentially the manual that's going to outline the techniques for powerful people in influential positions to slowly, subtly guide us to do whatever they see fit. And coming out of the very pen of the father of public relations is a contradiction so embarrassingly obvious that if any one of us were to make it in an argument, we would immediately be, you know, if not politely corrected by one of our fellow autonomy students. If we were to go out in the real world with an argument that contradictory, we would be shouted down. Yet here's a manual for governments and corporations, and that contradiction is not even addressed. In fact, it seems to be entirely looked over. So that's something to bear in mind when considering Bernays' work and the larger topic of propaganda. There's this sort of element of justified sinning. You know, if you grant us this one contradiction in the argument, then the world will be made a better place. Just let us sin this once. It'll only be once, I promise, just once. Because, right, that's always how it goes.
If you even catch it.
Right.
Yeah. Well said, and thanks for pointing that out, because it's not something people are even aware of, that they've consented to this. And anyone I've brought this book up to has never heard it in my life. And it's a very powerful artifact. And I'm really looking forward to Richard's future episodes. He's going to be doing one of the smart reads every other week. And the other week, he's going to be starting his History Connected series, where he's going to show his research on how he puts together his brain model. And I got a clip of the upcoming episode that's going to be releasing on Monday on VemTube. I'll play that here.
Atlantic Monthly, I would have to add in. So the way I would do that was like this. The Atlantic Monthly. I would open it in a new tab. I would drag it in over here. When you drag it in, it's going to go below him. You wait for it to fill in with the title, and then you just reorganize it, because he is not influential on the Atlantic. The Atlantic was influential on him as an employer. And now we have to do this. What's this? I don't know what this is. What is this? The Atlantic is an American magazine and multi-platform publisher. It was founded in 1857 in Boston, Massachusetts as the Atlantic Monthly. So it goes through. Commentary on the abolition of slavery, education, other major issues, and contemporary political affairs. Its founders included Francis H. Underwood, is that the guy from House of Cards? And prominent writers like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and John Greenleaf Whittier. James Russell Lowell was its first editor. All right, so now we've got a magazine. Who owns it today? Because that's a question. Company. Emerson Collective. Let's see if that's still accurate. So we'll read down a little bit. Oh, the Cabots. The Cabots are involved with this. That's interesting. Mr. Cabot. All right, so that's a whole tangent right there we can get into. Who are the Cabots? Who are the Lowells? And who speaks highly of them?
Really excited for this episode. It shows how Richard puts together his brain model and is able to connect all of the dots and how they all intersect. And it's just a great way to see like, oh, this is something that we can do. When we come across a Facebook post with a headline, we can make a couple clicks and look for the primary sources, where this is coming from, who owns this this information, where this information come from, what's the history of it, and we can all create our own brain models based off of any topic. Do any of you have a brain model started?
Yeah, I do. And I've started a couple over the years, but after taking the second brain course, I realized I've been losing a lot of information by trying to recreate the brain models. So it's a process you have to go through, determining like what is a causal relationship and what's related. And I had a big problem categorizing things at first, and that's just a process I've been working through. And watching that video, of course, was very helpful. Going through the second brain course was also extremely helpful, and just going through that process of trying and trying again has gotten me to create my own process for creating a brain. And I loved catching the tail end of that. I caught about 40 minutes of it, and I realized that my process is very similar to Rich's. So yeah, it was a very cool episode, and I think it was probably extremely educational for everyone who got involved.
Again, that goes along with not just accepting declarative statements and conclusions of others, but Rich is showing he's not giving you a conclusion. He's showing you the sources and how to research, and you can go through those steps by watching him, but really you're learning like how that process is in order for you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. So another huge aspect of autonomy is it would do us no good if Rich was just here giving us his conclusions, but we're learning the process of how to think for ourselves.
You know, in a different vein, because I haven't used the brain models a whole lot, but what I did start using it for was actually to keep notes from my integration exercises on the different people that I was having conversations with. So rather than having all these scribbled notes in a notebook after the call, I transfer them into the brain model. So then I have different categories of, you know, the general about them, and then what their passions are, what their goals are, but being able to kind of differentiate and keep my notes in a nice clean place.
Awesome. Yeah, and you get to see how Rich like physically does it with the mouse and the URLs, and it's just really helpful to kind of get some training wheels on how to use that powerful software in a way that's that adds value and or help organizes your life.
I guess I'll add one thing here too, and that's that I am planning to build a better application in the brain. More on that later, I suppose.
Awesome. Well, you just said it publicly, so we'll be following up with you.
Yeah. I'll give like a brief overview of what it looks like, because I want it to be like a collaborative platform or something someone can host on their own server. And the front end is a wiki, and then you'll be able to switch over to a mind map mode, just like the brain, to show the different connections that stem out from the links on the wiki page. And then another view is a sandbox mode for note cards. So you can take in a wiki page and add it as a note card onto your desk that you have, your virtual desk. You can sort those, move them around, create different categories and such. And that's kind of a way to brainstorm chapters for a book or an article. And yeah, that's my idea.
Sweet, man. I'm really looking forward to that. I just got distracted because a hawk just landed outside my window.
Oh, very cool.
It's a big bird. It could take a little dog. Well, fantastic. We are moving through today's episode at breakneck speeds, and we have one section left that we're going to cover, and that was last night's lecture. I don't know if you guys caught all of it. It was on sales, and I really like the clips because he showed several examples on what sales with integrity does not look like. Does anybody have any comments about those?
I think Amanda, go ahead.
It's just ironic that after graduating college, I did some costume building and design work in local theaters around the Boston, Massachusetts area. And that was when Glenn Ross was one of the shows that I did. And so I was, in my early 20s, and I hadn't been familiar with David Mamet's work, but designing that and actually being in a theater environment with people working that out on stage and listening to those monologues was so incredibly powerful. And then to see a clip last night as well, that's why we have the stereotypes that we do around the snake oil salesman, right? I mean, it's so clear to me that that's why we all carry this sort of icky feeling about the slimy salesman. And yet at the same time, it's almost like this collective unconscious acceptance of what sales is. And Rich did such a brilliant job last night and in earlier lectures of transforming and correcting that stereotype into what sales really can be in terms of that high value problem solving conversation, right, Kara? It's at the end of the day, it is a conversation and an exchange of value. So it was just funny to me to see that when I was first, when I was actually designing costumes for the folks who played that. Brought me back.
That's wild. That's wild. Yeah, it seems like this is another form of propaganda that's been handed to us, that such a powerful tool of sales and being able to connect and be able to create an offer, ask for your self-worth in all the relationships that we have in our lives. It's been repackaged into this like dirty snake oil, a thing that like you wouldn't want to even know about because of what it indicates.
Yeah, exactly. And even when I worked in the corporate world, there was this joke that all of our sales folks were just coin operated, and they would chuckle and laugh. And I was working in the high tech area, and a lot of our sales professionals were like incredibly talented and some of the best people that I ever met. But there's still that assumption, right? Which Rich also talked about last night, the toxicity of assumptions that we can make. Yeah, it's deep. It goes deep. Go ahead, Tony. Thanks for giving me the floor.
You already covered what I said, because all I was going to say is that presentation, it shows you that there's the icky sales and then there's problem solving and actually listening to people's problems and providing that. And if they don't have a problem, what are you trying to sell them?
Exactly. Yeah. That's the one curiosity that, I'm sorry, Daniel.
No, go ahead.
Listening to the other clip with Grant Cardone University, and talking about cold calling. That's the one curiosity I have, because as we've been practicing with the integration exercises in autonomy, we're starting within a place where someone has watched a presentation that's piqued their interest. They've gone to a website, they've read about what the course has to offer, and that's the launching pad where someone already has interest. If I disregard that and imagine someone just calling me up on the phone saying, hey, I've got something I think you will really want, that's where my curiosity lies, because I'm not going out to seek it. Seems like someone is assuming that I have a need that they are able to fill, and they're going to talk to me about it. So
cold calling could be coming at the aspect of coming at it from this point of view, like maybe they could. So instead of, answering the phone and be like, hey, I think I can, I have something that you need, maybe start off by saying, hey, do you have a chance to talk to me for a little bit so I can see if you are, maybe a fit for this product that I have.
Yeah, yeah.
It really slides right into what Tim was talking about, and having those challenging conversations with those in our life that aren't asking for solutions. They're unaware of solutions. They're usually unaware of their actual problems. And so that's kind of a cold call where, hey, I have some information that could really benefit you. Are you even like open to hearing it? And so it really relates strongly to cold calling. And then those warm leads are, yeah, just like you said, people have like seen some form of marketing. It spoke to them. They come to you, which is a completely different type of conversation because they're showing interest. And that's like what Kara role played this last week of already having your interest peaked, and then you just get to like widen, expand what that is, and then show a solution for it. Daniel, you're going to say something?
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on what you were saying about the like sort of anti-sales propaganda that has sort of pervaded our collective mindset. There is a deleted scene from The Godfather Part 2. So it's another Al Pacino flick, where his niece comes to him with her fiance or her boyfriend asking that they can be married. And, Al Pacino's giving him the classic rundown. Where do you go to school? What do you plan on doing? Yada, yada. And the guy says he's in fine arts. And Al kind of chuckles. He's like, how do you expect to support your new wife on fine arts? And the kid's all embarrassed. And he says, well, I don't like to talk about it, but I'm a major stockholder in my family's corporation. And so Al says, and I think this is very profound and instructive in getting over this sort of anti-sales mindset. He says, you shouldn't be embarrassed by your wealth. This contempt for money is just another trick of the rich to keep the poor without it. To me, that really hit deep, because it does seem to be the case that, the relatively poor in our society, of course, it's not like third world poverty, but those who are a little lower on the economic spectrum than others do tend to have a disdain for money. When you're pursuing some sort of activity that might accrue wealth, you're viewed as greedy or one of the people that is sort of causing the social problems. You're supposed to be spending your money on Netflix and beer and weed and cigarettes, not actually investing it in improving yourself. That's what nerds do. So I just wanted to get that quote in there. I mentioned it to Rich last night in the Q&A, but I wanted to read it again because it's a good approach to take, I think, when we see that it is a good tactic. If it's conscious or unconscious, I don't know. But for those that would like to monopolize those Federal Reserve notes, it would be in their interest for the rest of us to not want to accumulate money and to view it as some sort of reprehensible thing. It serves their purposes. So that's my addition to last night's lecture.
Definitely. That really speaks loudly with me. I grew up on government cheese, and I had this mental association that like money was the root of all evil. And I know that even that quote's like misquoted, that the love of money is the root of all evil. But I had it in my head that like this was the cause of all the problems in the world, and we just need to eradicate money, and everything will have a chance to get better. And in turn, I would spend my money as like fast as I could to like get rid of it. And it makes no sense because it was exactly what you said. Weed, Netflix, and like video games was what I was like burning it on, not improving myself. And I had to specifically work on my relationship with money in order to come to terms with it, to understand that it could be used for good It's just a tool, and then to allow it to come more into my life. And it's been a really long struggle, but that quote really encapsulates what again, like what we're told and how we're influenced on controlling our behavior.
Yeah, if you could just get past the fact that it's coming from the mouth of a mob boss.
Yeah. Hey, successful. He was successful.
There you go.
Yeah.
I really liked that life story, because it reminds me of like it made me think of a metaphor of how this money is like energy, and where are you going to direct it? Is it something that's going to create something positive in your life, or is it, making you passive and dragging you down?
For sure. Well, we've reached our time for this week's episode. That's it for Do It Live podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We had a great full house. It was awesome to have everybody jump in and out.
Hey, Joshua.
Yo.
Are we getting Ludger in here? Luger?
We're going to be working that into a future episode.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So again, thanks for everybody for sharing their insights. There's no way for any of us to catch all of the great content and experiences that are going on each week. So I find a lot of value in just being able to highlight some of the highlights, and being able to just know that there's more out there waiting for us to learn and grow from, and to hear everyone's perspectives from that. Join us next week. But first, make sure to subscribe for this podcast on YouTube if you're watching it here, so you never miss an episode. And if you want to know how to get autonomy in your life, go to getautonomy.info/ignite and tell them one of us sent you. See you next time.